What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Akalon here, and as always, joined by Rurikon. Rurikon, I just realized that I have done the last 3 episode intros. We should probably switch that at some point. But anyway.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mythic Banter podcast. It is me, Rurikon, and Akalon, and Sebi is taking a break today. So hopefully you're all ready for an amazing show. Akalon, take it away. There you go.
There we go. Rurikon, well done. Well done, ladies and gentlemen. Hearts in chat for Mr. Rurikon. Holy shit. Well done, fam. Well done. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They can, I think you can use emojis in, like, normal comment section. You know, you can. Yeah.
Okay.
Someone use a heart emoji in the chat, in the comment section. We would appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into this, something serious that we need to talk about. If you don't like this fucking podcast, I will punch you in the balls. So hit the like and hit the subscribe button right now. Immediately.
You're doing the Philip the Franco thing where he was like, hit that like button or I'll punch you in the throat. It was something like that he did for a while.
I don't think a throat punch is as bad as a ball punch. You know, I feel like I would be way more motivated to hit a like button if I knew that there was a fist this far from my balls, and if I don't do it, it's like bam, because all you need really is that, right? And then it's like
that there's always that debate that people talk about how women keep saying that childbirth is much more painful than punching the balls.
Yep.
I still have to say no. I think you guys are making all that up because you see a guy getting punched in the balls. He never goes and says, you know what? I think I'll do that again. But with women, it's like okay, this is a joke, okay? For everybody in the female,
but it is true.
A joke.
It is true, though. Like, dude, you won't ever. You're a guy that just goes and willingly says, punch me in the balls, please.
Actually, there's probably some masochists out there. Like, you know what? I would like another one.
Yeah, why not? Some cock and ball torture. Let's do this.
Oh, man, what a way to start the show, dude.
Hey, dude, we were talking. So, chat, we need to let you guys in on a little secret here for all of those that have not yet seen. We started this discussion like offline about. I have it on my Twitter. Maybe Naomi, the editor, can find it and show you guys. But there's a lady that is. It's not even deep frying a pizza. It is. It's like. There's oil, more oil than a shallow fry, but it's a pizza, frozen pizza, by the way, in oil. And then she turns it around. I don't know what she was thinking. Because I could still be okay with putting it, downside, putting the bottom side of it in there, and then maybe closing the lid so that it cooks in the residual heat of the oil and shit.
No.
I could be like, no. But I could be like, all right, it's not going to be great, but it's something. But then she flips it. And when you flip it, what do you think happens to the exposed toppings? The cheese and the fucking ham and the meat? Everything is off. When she takes that thing out of the oil, it's just the dough. Everything is in the oil.
It's like, you need to understand, right? The dough of the pizza, it pretty much absorbs all of that oil.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason why you put batter on things that you deep fry, because it makes a nice little crust.
Yeah.
But if you're going to try to deep fry a frozen pizza, it's going to be soggy and disgusting. Because the dough is just going to soak. I don't want to talk about this anymore, Akko.
It didn't even go crispy, man. It wasn't even
already
fucking
had to
crispy.
watch it. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
That was the most unappetizing bullshit. Like, that is what you need to watch when you want to lose weight.
Yeah.
When you feel like,
takes your appetite away.
Yeah, I could have a meal right now. Watch that video. You will not have a fucking meal right now.
No,
actually, it is.
Never mind.
Yeah, it was bad. But hopefully Naomi will have that on the screen. If not, then you're shut out of luck. You have to follow me on that. But all right, Rurikon. It's been a slow week. I think I speak for everyone. It's
I
been a
mean,
slow one.
in a way, it's like if you've been playing Elden Ring, you've been too busy to pay attention to anything else anyway. So it's like it
True.
might not necessarily have been a slow week for you. But in terms of like major gaming news, at least up until
Mhm.
the point that we recorded this podcast, I feel like not a whole lot has really happened.
Dude, like nothing. It's like everyone's taking a fucking break. I did see the
Yeah.
trailer for Flintlock that just came out. It's a new game that's sort of from the beginning been infested by Sweet Baby Inc. bullshit. And it is pretty much as bad as you might expect. The dialogue is just ridiculous. It sounds like it was written for 5-year-olds, but then
I
clearly it's not supposed to be.
the thing about Flintlock is like I thought it was really interesting when I first saw it. And the thing to me about Flintlock is like I haven't even paid attention to the whole DI Sweet Baby Inks. I don't pay attention to that stuff because I'm like, hey, listen, I'll play it and I'll see it for myself whether or not I
Mhm.
like it. That's the way that I usually look at those things. But the thing about Flintlock that I started noticing is the animations because the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, I really like this concept.
Yeah,
Those animations still look rough. And then you see the most recent trailers and it's like, those animations still look rough.
yeah,
And the game's coming out in like in August or something like that.
yep,
So I don't know how I feel about that, but I am curious about it. I'm open to the idea of that game,
yeah.
but you know, I also have other stuff that I want to play, so it's kind of
I mean,
rough.
I think conceptually, it sounds like a really good game. What's not to like? The gods interfered with the mortals, and now the mortals are trying to kill all of the gods. That's someone in the comment section actually said, "This is the we have God of War at home game," and
Oh
I
man.
thought, yeah, that is pretty apt.
I mean, but the thing is it's probably a double A studio, right? The guys behind that game, I would imagine. They're not
um,
really going for the same budget levels as something like a God of War.
I don't know. I mean, I genuinely don't know that much about the studio because, again, I follow the SBI stuff sort of very much lazily. It's not, I don't keep myself busy with this shit. It's not the bulk of my content. But every once in a while, I'll see a studio popping up, and especially studios that, like, the only part that I hate about the SBI stuff is these studios that hate gamers. When they just flat out go, yeah, we don't care about you as gamers. Then I'm like, okay, screw you. This one hasn't done that yet. They reached out to the SBI crowd and they were like, we
Oh,
fired Sweet Baby Inc. We're no longer
these
working with Sweet Baby Inc.
these guys are the ones who made Ashen. Ashen was pretty cool. Ashen was pretty
Yeah,
decent. It's A44 Games is the
yeah,
studio behind this game.
yeah. But there is another one, just to very quickly get a little bit excited about, and then we'll move on. On the 9th, Once Human is launching. And I can
Is that
tell
any
you now,
good?
oh, bro, what I've seen of that game, and I've talked to a couple of people that got into the beta, holy shit, that game looks nuts. That game looks amazing. I'm so excited for it because they've quietly just developed this entire massive survival game that no one even knew about. Like they didn't even talk about it that often. But it looks phenomenal, and the people that's playing the beta thinks that this is just gonna be off the charts. So yeah.
What's the business model for this game? Because I've heard it's gonna have like seasons and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've no idea, to be fair. I haven't even looked into it because they wouldn't get me into the beta. So I'm a little salty about that. Uh
Oh.
but yeah, I haven't looked into it at all.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. See, there we go.
yeah.
This was the thing. I remember that I looked at Once Human at some point, and then I decided, kind of probably not going to mess around with it. This is being worked on by the
Mhm.
Skin Job Company.
Who the hell is that?
You don't know who the Skin Job Company is? The
I have
guys
no
who made
idea.
Diablo Immortal?
Oh, I mean,
Oh.
it looks good though.
this is this
I
is by
mean,
NetEase. I'm not a big fan of NetEase. I'm gonna be real.
yeah, but
Ever since Diablo Immortal, I was very much soured
you
on
see
their whole thing.
but
But
the thing with NetEase is they're just the publisher, and the other thing with NetEase is they publish so many different games. Like some of their games are going to be shit, like Diablo Immortal. Some of their games are actually pretty decent. They don't do all of their games like super scumbag, but there are games that they go super scumbag in. So I'll try it out, and if it's good, it's the highest wishlist game on Steam, by the way, at the minute.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. People also love Genshin Impact, so
No, possible. But all right, so on to actual news. Just wanted to sort of, share that for those of you that
yeah.
might be interested in it. On to some actual news. Rurikon. Now, this is actually serious, unlike the joke that I made previously.
This is serious
The
business.
All of the media has been on this, and when the games
Uh-oh.
media is on something, that's serious shit, right? All of the gamers have been pointing this out. As it turns
Uh-oh.
out, right? As it turns out, um, Helldivers 2 is dead. 6
Oh,
months, it's completely dead.
no!
It's never
It's
been a good
over.
game. Yeah, it was the worst game that's ever launched. After 6
Oh,
months, it's lost
no.
90% of its player base. That's just terrible. Terrible. I can't imagine why anyone would play this game. All of these suckers that got drawn into all the fun that they were having while playing it should have known that after 6 months the game was going to lose 90% of its player base, and therefore it is absolute
Yeah.
evidence that there is something
It's a
seriously
bad
wrong
game.
with this game. Yeah.
And it's a bad game. It's
Yeah.
just like, listen, guys, Helldivers 2, it's just a fundamentally bad game by any conceivable metric because it no
100%.
longer has 458,000 people playing it at the same time because that was clearly sustainable. Of
Yeah.
course it was. It's so ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
the whole thing about the Helldivers 2 situation, right? Is that I never even looked at it as kind of like, oh, this is going to be a live service game. People are going to be playing it for ages. But I always looked at it as like, oh, this is going to be a fun little romp. And then it's going to be something that we're going to be revisiting as they add updates and whatnot. And it's going to
Yeah.
be a really fun time. And I had an absolute blast with the time that I've played of Helldivers 2. I
Mhm.
think that the game is absolutely phenomenal. I think that the developers are absolutely punching above their weight.
Yep.
And it was very cool to see the heights that the game reached.
Yeah.
But naturally, for those that haven't caught on yet, I'm being sarcastic. The game is still phenomenal. I mean, I was being sarcastic when I said the game is over. The game
Yeah.
is still phenomenal. Its 24-hour peak is 45,000 concurrent users, which is extremely
That's
healthy when you take into
very good.
consideration. Yeah, when you take into consideration that, number one, these are only Steam numbers. These are
Mhm.
Steam numbers, so you're not even counting how many people are playing on PlayStation,
Yep.
which need I remind people that this is a game that was published by PlayStation and
Mhm.
potentially at some point might even come into PlayStation Plus, which is going to give it another surge in popularity
Yep.
and all of these things. But fundamentally, even if you were just to take the Steam numbers, this is still an extremely healthy player base. And these games, they web and flow. This focus that people have on the popularity of a game and how it needs to, oh my God, my game is dying. There's not enough people playing. It's like, motherfucker, are you playing with those 458,000 people?
No, obviously
This is a
not.
4-player co-op game. 4 players.
Yeah.
If there's 10 players playing it, you can still make a party. Okay, 10 players is going to be a little bit rough.
Dude, it doesn't even have to be. If you have 3 friends, you can still play that game. You don't have to worry about anyone.
You just go and you play the game. Like, yeah, that's the thing. But people have this hyperfixation around numbers that, no, my game needs to make big numbers. It's like, no, it doesn't. Your game needs to be good.
Yeah.
Like, a game doesn't need to be popular to be good. I played lots of games that are not popular that are also very good.
Yeah.
It's just that this notion that, oh my God, but this is all started by that Paul Tassi article where he talks about, this game lost 90% of its player base. And it's like, the 458,000 people were never the entirety of its player base.
No.
That this was like a peak in popularity. The game went viral. And
Yeah.
then you also have the situation where PlayStation shot their own game in the foot and never bothered to actually cure that wound because people are still required to. No, they're not required to have the PSN account, but at the same time, in those 200 countries that don't have PSN, they still can't play the game, which doesn't make any sense. But, PlayStation's going to PlayStation, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, the take here has to be, so I need to make this clear to anyone that might be jumping on this bandwagon. The only games that managed to pull 400, 500 plus thousand players concurrently, basically always, will be your PvP games. So, like your MOBAs or your arena shooters like Valorant or Counter Strike
Counter
2.
Strike.
Yeah, those are the games that will pull that because it's PvP. It fundamentally appeals to a very specific audience. And usually those players don't play a lot of other games, right? This is what they play. For a game like Helldivers 2, in fact, I think that those developers are actually blown away by the fact that the
Oh
game has
yeah, they
managed
are.
to do what it's done for as long as it did. Because this game fundamentally, in my opinion, and it's exactly what you said, right? The ebbs and the flows of it. At some point in the near future, they're going to release a massive patch or a new expansion that adds either a new enemy class, a bunch of new weapons, a bunch of new shit. And then you're going to see that player base just skyrocket again into the, 200, 300. Will it ever reach 400,000 again? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't have to. 45,000 concurrent players on Steam? Dude, that's better than most games, just FYI.
Oh yeah.
And these are games that we would consider to be highly successful. That's
But
good.
it was the same conversation around Pal World, if you remember. Like
Yep.
Pal World came out of the gate swinging, and their all-time peak was 2 million players.
Yeah.
And right now they're sitting pretty at 102,000 on their most recent 24-hour peak. And this is after they released like a patch because it was much lower before that.
Mm.
But it's like at the end of the day, I think that developers of Pal World never expected that, oh, the 2 million players is just our standard now. Of course not. It was just
Yeah.
a cool thing to see because it was a cool game that was developed, and that it kind of like flies in the face of a lot of what AAA industry
Yeah.
is doing, very much like a game like Helldivers 2. And it's just cool to see these games getting as popular as they do. But naturally, this is not something that is going to be sustainable because people eventually trickle back down to whatever game they were playing, and it is
Yeah.
what it is. But for a lot of people, these games become their default game, their go-to
Yeah.
game, which definitely shows with these concurrent players. I was actually checking out even the Enshrouded concurrence, and Enshrouded sitting at like 9,000 players, which is really good for those
Yeah.
developers. Like a lot of people are saying, "Oh man, those guys fell off." It's like, no, bro. What do you mean? All games have this ebb and flow. They
Yeah.
release big surge of players, and then a couple of months down the line, things die down a little bit, and that's fine. The whole thing is, this is one of the reasons why, at least I believe, that they didn't do it. The guys behind Helldivers 2, they didn't go on like an
Hiring spree.
expansion spree,
Yeah.
yeah, and started hiring people. They're just like, okay, let's hire like one or two more people to help us manage the community or whatever, and then let's just keep the things going, and eventually things will die down, which is what
Yeah.
happened. Now they just develop the game, they do what they want, and I think it's cool. And I
Mm.
I really think that sometimes when you write these types of articles, it actually ends up being bad for the game. Not that you shouldn't. It's like
Mm.
it is what it is. But like the public perception can sometimes cause people like, well, I guess it's time for me to, game's dead, gotta
Yeah.
leave, which is kind of dumb because if you think about it, it's a four-player co-op game. What do you mean game is dead?
Dude,
They
but
have they have a DM, like a dungeon master, that kind of
yeah.
scales things back and forth to make sure that all the objectives are achievable to the current size of its player base. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, the reason I don't like articles like this and why I don't think articles like this should be written is if you go and you look at Helldivers 2, it has basically been the bane of the journalist's existence since its inception. They were attacking this
Really?
game. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because remember, at the time of the whole Gamergate 2 fiasco, when that kicked off, gamers were sort of praising Helldivers 2 as this is what we want as gamers, not this bullshit that you guys keep shoving down our throats. And so the journalists just sort of automatically decided that Helldivers 2 is bad, and all of the other games we need to defend them because remember, none of these media companies actually still work independently. They're not independent media. They are very much paid for by the giant corporations. And you know, it shows. It shows in the way that they choose to cover things. Like, why is that news? A game that is 6 months old that isn't an MMO, just FYI. This is not an MMO. There's not like giant raids and dungeons and classes to level. It like, why is it news that it lost 90% of its player base? Its player base is still super healthy. And at 45,000 concurrents, by the way, guys, that still means that they have hundreds of thousands of players that's playing the game.
Yeah, actual players.
You know, because concurrent just means at the same time. So at any given point, there are about 45,000 people playing it. As people quit and log off, new people log on. So that's a lot of fucking players in a day.
It's interesting because there's still a lot of people that don't understand the concept of concurrent,
Yeah.
as was proven to me the other day as I was having an argument in social media, and this guy kept saying like, "Oh, the game barely holds 1 million players anymore," and he was talking about Elden Ring, and I was like, "Bro,
Oh, wow.
bro, what do you mean? 700,000 concurrents, bro? What do you mean?"
Yeah, that is easy.
It's just like
3 million players.
Yeah, dude is just like completely clueless. Has no idea on the concept of concurrence.
No, I think.
But see, that was another one, right? Back after the release of Elden Ring. I don't know if you were following it, but it's like 3 months after the game released, people were like, see, the game wasn't good. The population's dwindling. And it's like, yeah, people finished the game.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, they finished the game. They're done with it. It's like, yes, makes sense.
Yeah, the issue is that most people seem to go into this mindset of everyone loves to play Souls games just over and over and over again because they see some streamers who literally will finish the game and then immediately start playing again. Yes, those are.
I didn't do that. What?
No.
Me?
Well, not. I know you're a Souls-like creator, right? But you have other games that you play as well. So there are times where you step away from Souls.
No, but I did do that. I did exactly. I finished DLC, instantly started again.
But think about most players. Most players won't do that, right? Because for most players, the concept is more, I finished it. I saw everything I needed to see. I'm gonna go play other games now. It's expected to be that way. The game doesn't have a subscription. And so, and I feel like this is also something that people need to keep in mind. One of the reasons MMOs can boast millions of players is the subscription. Once you pay a subscription, you're sort of bought into it to some extent. So even when it's not that good, you're still going to play because you paid in order to play. Whereas, in a game like Elden Ring or a game like Helldivers 2, where you didn't pay any monthly subscription, when you're done, you're done. And you go play something else. This is just such a non-story by the media, man. But anyways, onto another, I guess, bombshell. Although this time it isn't a non-story. It's an actual, like a dividing factor of the gaming industry, I guess.
Okay.
At this point. And the only reason I say that it's divisive is I made a tweet about this, and some people genuinely don't see the issue with it. But okay, so Dragon Age Veilguard is coming out soon. And unlike Elden Ring, just FYI, that doesn't have a pause menu, even though it does, but it doesn't, according to all the journalists. Unlike Elden Ring, that doesn't have a pause, it has been confirmed that Dragon Age indeed does have a pause, like all the other Dragon Ages that had pauses. But, more importantly, it has difficulty sliders. Burkan, it has difficulty sliders, bro. This is what Elden Ring doesn't have, of course.
When it comes to difficulty, I always tend to prefer video games that don't have a difficulty selection. And a lot of times people will question me like, well, why wouldn't you want an easy mode for game X, Y, and Z? What's the big deal? It doesn't affect you. And that is the first misconception that people have, which is it doesn't affect me. It does. And the reason it does is because more often than not, whenever developers put in multiple difficulties, especially when you go five difficulties and beyond, because like sometimes you can even tolerate easy, normal, hard, because that's at least less things that they have to work with. But a lot of times they go like very easy, I don't know, story mode, very easy,
Like 7
normal,
difficulty sliders.
challenging, hard, very hard, extreme, ultimate,
Nightmare.
and yeah. And the thing that bothers me about that is
Mhm.
that, not even exaggerating, about 90% of video games that have multiple difficulties, what usually ends up happening to me is that there's not a difficulty that I enjoy playing.
Yeah,
So usually you'll go to normal and it's too easy. And then you'll go to like hard and it's like, that's it's a little bit more challenging, still not that hard. And then you go to like ultimate, and it's like, okay, now the bosses just have infinite health and you deal no damage. And so it's still not hard, but now on top of not being hard, it's also boring
yeah,
because you're sitting in there and every fight is one big slog that you're just like, okay, let me hit this boss 50 times
yeah,
before I actually get any damage in. And then, you make a mistake because you're just getting bored of like doing the same thing over and over and over. And you get
yeah,
heavily punished. And you're just like, oh, and that's difficulty. Like, no, this is the reason why I like it when they don't have a difficulty slider, because it means
yeah,
that they were able to put all of their resources into ensuring that the one difficulty the game does have is going to be balanced.
yeah.
And that is why I prefer video games without difficulty sliders. But anyway, in regards specifically to the Dragon Age situation,
Yep.
I'm not against them doing whatever the hell they want. It's like, hey, look, you
Yeah,
want to have difficulty sliders, go right for it. When I play the game, I will then see, okay, are these good difficulty sliders? Did
yeah,
these make sense? Did they not make sense? I'll have to see that stuff for myself. And then they also have a bunch of different options
yeah.
that allow you to really customize the experience, which, accessibility and all that. I think that's cool. They also have the whole thing where you can't die. There's
Yeah.
like a mode where you just straight up cannot die.
Well,
And
it's not even a
again,
mode,
I'm
it's
not,
just one of the options in the
yeah, it's a
custom
setting.
settings is you can say
Yeah,
no deaths.
no deaths, which to me, it just goes into like, okay, I mean, you wanted to have like this super easy mode where people can't even die.
Mm.
That's fine. If that's what the developers want to make, that is perfectly fine. If that's what they want to do, it just might mean that the game might end up not being for me if the game is balanced with that in mind. Because how are you going to punish players that do die? What is the penalty for death? Is it just
Yeah,
the time, the loss of time? Is there something else there? Like,
yeah,
what is the deal? I have to see how the game handles death, and I have to see how I feel about that particular mechanic being a thing. But
yeah.
again, if the developers want to have all of these options, I think, hey, more power to them. That's perfectly fine.
So
That's not really a big deal to me, but I do see that a lot of people are against it because everybody wants to have what we define as a, what is it, loss state, I think it's
mhm.
what's called.
Yeah,
Everybody likes to have, at least there's a loss state where you actually lose. And if you turn that on, fundamentally, there's no longer a lost state. You will never lose.
yeah.
You just keep fighting until you kill everything.
Well, so I first wanna talk about the difficulty thing because I think you hit the
Okay.
nail, on the head there, right? The whole problem for me with difficulty is where did you start as a developer? Did you develop the game around hard being the intended way that you want to play? Or did you develop the game around easy being the intended way you want to play? Or balanced being the which one of the difficulties is the intended playstyle? Because that will make a massive difference in how the difficulty sliding actually operates. Now, if you're a developer, we often talk about this as incentives, right? What are your incentives? So, for example, in MMOs, when you have a cash shop, the incentive becomes to feed the cash shop and to get players to engage in the cash shop. That automatically skews the incentives of game creation. Because when you have a really cool mount, for example, why would you put that really cool mount for free in the game when you can put that really cool mount in the cash shop, right? So it becomes a sort of, unless you have a developer that is incredibly moral, um, almost always the coolest shit is going to be put inside the cash shop. Now, the same thing is true in every single arc of life. What is the focus? And then what is the incentives? Now, if you're a game developer, the incentive here is going to be around whatever difficulty setting the overwhelming majority of the player base is going to pick. And that usually means normal or balanced. That's where most people will finish and play the game. And unlike gamers like myself, people that have a lot of time, like streamers, for example, or just people that love a specific game, most people don't replay games. Most people, once they've seen the game, they move on to the next game. They don't like I've played Witcher 3 9 or 10 times now at this point. Mass Effect, I finished over a dozen times. So I like replaying games, especially if it's a good one. But in Mass Effect, I'll use Mass Effect as the best example here. It is so obvious that Mass Effect's incentive and the development cycle was focused on normal difficulty. And the reason for it is when you do go to the hard difficulty, the enemy AI does not change. The AI keeps doing what the AI does always. The only difference is that enemies are now bullet sponges. It takes a lot more bullets to kill enemies. Now,
Yeah.
that is not a fun, engaging experience. As much as people might think it is, when I headshot enemies on normal and they die insta, and yet it takes 4 headshots to kill an enemy on very hard, that's not like, what? Why? I headshot this enemy. It should be dead. It doesn't have armor on it. And yet it isn't dying because this is hard now, right? Headshot only does X amount of damage and it happens to not be enough to kill the mob. Because your incentive was never to design around hard. Hard was simply added as an afterthought in order for people who do want a more challenging experience to be able to get it. And this is in Veilguard the same problem, right? In Veilguard, I guarantee you that this game was designed around normal as being the incentive structure, which means the harder levels aren't going to be that hard. Now, hopefully, AI will eventually start changing this, where the AI will become so good that you can, instead of just buffing the enemy's health to, I don't know, bullet sponge level, you can actually make the AI, honestly, because that would actually be fun. Right? If the whole game
If
plays
you
exactly the same, the enemies are just a lot smarter on, the different difficulty settings.
if you were to like actually change enemy behaviors
Mm,
or stuff that happens, like say for instance, okay, you're playing this on normal, so the enemy has access to spell 1, spell 2, and spell 3. You're
yeah,
playing it on hard, enemy now has access to spells 4 and 5, which
yeah,
are going to change the whole dynamic of the fight.
yeah,
That is a much more interesting thing. Not even that,
mhm,
but even let's say for instance, I don't know how important things like flanking are going to be. They used to be fairly important in Dragon Age Origins. I don't
yeah,
know how important that is going to be in Veilguard.
mm,
But let's say, for instance, if you're playing on normal, enemies don't really flank. They charge you head on and
yeah,
it's whatever. And unless it's like a special situation where they trap you, they don't really go for the flank.
yeah,
But if you're then playing on hard, the AI will now go like, aha, I know that I can get bonus damage if I sneak up from behind this guy. So they start implementing tactics where they'll engage you head on, and then like a small little goblin or something starts skirting away to kind of
yeah,
come at you from behind. Those are interesting things for difficulty,
yeah,
right? Just bloating numbers, not an interesting difficulty mechanic at all. And that's the
mm,
problem. That is what usually is the standard practice when it comes to multiple difficulty settings is straight up, no, we just make numbers go bigger.
yeah,
Bosses hit harder, you hit for less, and they have more health. And it's like,
yeah.
okay, that's just you're just dragging the fight. That's
Yeah,
it.
you're
That's what you're doing.
basically what you're doing is you're punishing the player for playing on a harder difficulty. You're not making the game
Yeah.
harder. You're just punishing the player for playing on a greater difficulty. But then to speak about the no death thing, and this is where I have a difference of opinion to, I'm sure, a lot of people. Because a lot of people have asked me, well, why does it matter? You just have deaths on and it doesn't even matter. But okay, so let's talk about this from an objective standpoint. And let's talk about this from a health of the game perspective. You're absolutely right that it does not affect me personally in any way, shape, or form. But if I am focused on the health of the game, in other words, I want this game to do really well, then it will absolutely affect me. How, you may ask? Well, in life, psychology for humans is very important because games are fundamentally made for humans unless you know of a game that's made for elephants or some shit. That wouldn't apply then. But as long as games are made for humans, it is super important to understand the pleasure centers of the brain and how they operate. And we're specifically talking about here the effort versus reward centers of the brain. So the way this operates is in a world where downsides exist and hardship exists, victories are celebrated through a series of dopamine or serotonin releases depending on the activity that you're engaged in. So if I'm doing something really, really difficult, like Elden Ring, for example, really fighting this boss, trying to crush this boss, while I'm on the boss, I'm getting a lot of dopamine release because obviously I'm playing a game, I'm having fun. But then when I kill that boss, there's a giant burst of dopamine and serotonin that is released into my brain that makes me feel euphoric. Right? There's a euphoric feeling as soon as that boss dies that you wouldn't get if the boss just healed over. Right? I
Man,
made this
you have been playing Elden Ring.
not in the last week because I haven't been able to stream. But I will say this, right? And I used this example last week when I spoke to you and Sebi about Margaret or Margaret,
Margaret
Margaret.
Margaret the Foul Omen.
Because I went into that fight and I completely overcompensated for the difficulty sliders by summoning every fucking thing that the game can summon, I didn't get that release of dopamine and serotonin from killing Margaret because I didn't do anything. My mobs basically took it down to quarter HP and I just killed it with a couple of hits. So you don't get that release because you didn't get the struggle before you get the release. And it's fine if you want to play that way. But now imagine if I started doing that on every single boss in Elden Ring. So I oversummon on every boss. Do you really think I'm finishing Elden Ring? Chances are no.
Yes.
No, I probably won't
Yes.
finish it. No, I probably wouldn't.
Wait. You mean if you're going to be motivated enough? I thought
Yeah.
you were saying like, does it count? And I was
No,
like,
no,
yes,
no,
it
no.
does
Yeah,
count.
it does
But
count.
like, yeah, whether or not you're going to be motivated, yeah, of course, you want to struggle. You
Yeah,
want to struggle on Elden Ring. Yes,
I'll
I agree.
probably eventually go, I'm bored now. Because the bosses are not providing. And I know this because I have personal experience with it. There's a game that I started playing. It was about 2 years ago. It's called New Dawn, right? Or a year ago. When it first came out, I played it. And I put everything on easy because I just wanted to see the story of the game. It's a city builder, but I wanted to see what the story is all about. And I put it on easy. I managed to play for about 5 hours and then I got really bored and I just sort of stopped playing and I didn't go back to it. And then about 2 months ago, I was really bored and I thought, well, I have this game. Let me try it out again. Only this time, I decided to go for the balance mode, the way that it's meant to be played. I ended up finishing the game and I ended up playing for
Yep.
like 3-4 days. And the reason for it is now there were all of these other mechanics in the game, right? Like actual disasters that could happen and actual things that would happen that makes the game, yes, it feels a lot harder because you have to think about a lot more things. But that challenge also is really fun when you overcome it. When you remove deaths, you remove the ultimate challenge. I want to know
Just
how
to
many.
survive.
Yeah, just the sheer act of surviving is now gone. I don't think and what's sad about it is when people quit playing a game because they're not having fun, they don't always know why. So what can end up happening here is people will stop playing it, turn off deaths because no one likes dying in a game. And this is one of those things where you should not have given the person what they wanted because it's not what they needed. This is the one part where J. Allen Brack may actually say, you think you do, but you don't, right? Because that is really it. Instinctively, players will go, yeah, no deaths. That sounds brilliant. But then,
I just want to see the story.
yeah, I just want to see the story. But then you never even get to the end of the story. Because, and that's not to say that no one, right? There will be people that even with no deaths will get to the end of the story. But how many people, and this is just a question, I'm not making an accusation here. How many people will start playing on no deaths? 4 or 5 hours in, they'll realize, man, I am bored. This game is just, I'm not having fun. I'm killing all of these enemies. I'm getting all of this loot, but none of it matters to me. You know, I don't find any, I have no relationship with anything here. And that's because there's no downsides. There's nothing that
Yeah,
could potentially go wrong.
that's one of those things. It's very hard for me to relate to that because I always like my games to have a certain level of challenge. And so just even thinking about playing a video game where they give you straight up the option of not dying, I'd be like, I would never turn that on. Like, because
Yeah.
if I'm dying too much, either I don't know what I'm doing and I'm doing something wrong, or the
Mm.
game's poorly developed. One of the two things is happening.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it's a weird thing. Like I understand that some, like, because this usually gets to, we usually talk about this as well in the context of accessibility,
Mhm.
but it's like I don't know that not dying is a good thing for accessibility.
Yeah.
It's
I agree.
again, I'm not saying that it is or that it isn't. I'm saying I don't know if
Mm.
that is a good thing. I think that when it comes to accessibility, I think stuff like uh what's it called, colorblind mode,
Yep.
high contrast modes, text to speech, fully rebindable buttons, all of that stuff. In the case of Dragon Age, I also think that more pausing options make sense because even in Dragon Age Origins, right, you would pause every second in the middle of a
Mm.
fight to consider your options because
Oh,
it's a,
yeah.
it's a highly tactical game. You're
Yeah.
not just, it's not an action game technically speaking, even though this one looks like it's more
It
for
is action
action.
combat.
If
They've gone
Yeah, when
completely in
when
the
you
action
see
combat thing.
when you see the actual gameplay, this one feels like it's much more about the action combat.
Mm.
But you know, Dragon Age has never been just about action. It's always about more tactical. You have these dudes,
Yeah.
so having more pausing options. In some situations, I would even argue, hey, if you want to have like, how in you have turn-based games and you can be like, no, actually I want to take that turn back, so you have something that like rewinds time as an
Yeah.
accessibility option. I
Yeah.
think that might be cool too. But
Mhm.
like when you get to the point where there's no death,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels weird to me. And again, I'm not against it. If that's what developers want to do, that's what developers want to do. Go right ahead. And I hope it works. I hope it's fantastic. I hope the game's super successful.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I just don't see it. And I hope that they balance the game in a way where it's like, well, it looks like you're not really pulling through on these encounters on the hardest difficulty. Have you considered turning on no death mode? And it's like, what?
I mean,
It's like,
I
what?
I will say to their credit, and it needs to be said here, they did say that there's the custom difficulty mode where you can change everything. Then there is an easy mode, there's a normal mode, but then the hardest mode is called insanity mode or nightmare mode. A nightmare is a permanent lock in choice. So once you've locked in nightmare, you cannot change the difficulty later. You can't go
Mhm.
in and make changes. So this suggests, at least to me on the surface, that the game was designed around nightmare mode and that from there
No.
they scaled things back. Well, the reason I say that is it's a very risky decision. Now, AAA is stupid enough that they would make that, but it is a risky decision
I'm
to
just
lock people into a difficulty mode that wasn't the intended design. Because what if things are completely busted and broken day one, right? Now
And
you're
it
locked into
wouldn't
that.
it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Like to give an idea, one of the
Hmm.
recent, not recent, but like a game that I played a while ago, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I played it when that came out. And I was like, oh hells yeah, I'm gonna play this on max difficulty. And it was so busted that
Hmm.
you would backstab enemies, and because you didn't even deal enough damage, the enemies wouldn't even react to getting backstabbed.
Wow.
It's like your damage wouldn't hit like the backstab threshold or something. I
Oh,
remember
wow.
that this one was always the one that I bring up, and people are probably going to be like, "Oh, here comes Rurikon with the story again." But it's like, bro, there was an enemy that was sleeping. I stab him in the chest
Yeah.
with a spear tip, and then I take the spear from the other side of the dude, right?
Yeah.
And he
You put it
continues to
right through.
just sleep. He's still, and then suddenly stands up, and that was the animation. I was like, bro, your game is such ass. Like, what are you doing?
Dude,
But
Ubisoft.
it's like the thing is, whenever you have a difficulty called insanity,
Mhm.
usually what I expect from a difficulty like that is like, okay, it's going to be bloated HP. Boss is going to deal tons of damage. There's going to be all types of like negative status effects that are going to be placed upon you the second you begin the fight, and
Yeah.
that's usually what I expect. And so usually when it comes to those, I'm like, okay, I'm on the difficulty immediately below that one. That's
Yeah.
the one that I want to play on. Because usually insanity difficulty is actually not that much fun.
No, especially if it wasn't designed around it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's the thing. If they designed around it, I think it could be interesting, but
yeah.
I highly doubt they did. I think that they would have designed for normal difficulty,
Mhm.
and that is probably going to feel super easy for most of the people that are, even well
Yeah.
versed in any action combat type of system.
Mhm.
So probably they'll want to go like one difficulty above. I don't know how many difficulties there actually are in the game,
Yeah.
but they'll probably want to go one difficulty above. And if you go for that insanity stuff, I think it's probably going to end up being a miserable experience, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'd be
Yeah, I
happy
mean,
to be proven wrong.
this is just opinions at this point because we
Yeah.
don't know. But I will say, I think Baldur's Gate was one of the clear exceptions for me that even on the easiest mode, like the only thing that would change on the easiest mode is mobs would oftentimes would be far less likely to use deadly spells, and the AI wasn't always as crisp on like the easiest difficulties. But even on the easy difficulty, fights are still can be super challenging. You can still run into fights that is just overwhelming in terms of the amount of enemies that you're going to face. And on normal, it was actually a super fun experience. It was just the fights are
I
really good.
I think I played it on normal, if I'm not
Mm.
mistaken. And
I
the
did
reasoning
normal
I
as
did
well.
that, I did normal on Baldur's Gate because I was like, I don't want to min max my character. I want to just be a bard and do dumb
Yeah,
shit.
but that is legitimately, that is the thing about Baldur's Gate. If you go for the hardest difficulty, it's
You have to
all
min
about the
max.
min max. Your character has
Yeah.
to be every last bit of damage and health that you can get out of a character needs to be there. Party composition starts to make a
The
lot of sense. Like,
owlbear from the top rope.
yeah,
Hell's
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
dude.
Like you have to, yeah, you have to be very careful with that shit. But all right, so that is Dragon Age Veilguard. I am looking forward to it. I'm a huge Dragon Age fan, so I'm definitely going to give it a go. I literally just bought on the Steam Summer Sale. I bought all three of the Dragon Ages because I have them
Is that
on.
still going?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think so. It must be. But yeah, it was like super cheap. It was like next to fucking nothing. I paid almost nothing for that. Basically, I didn't even pay the price of an actual indie game for all three of them. So that's how cheap it was.
I've
Um,
never even played Inquisition all the way. I might get that
Inquisition is
just just
fun.
to, just to not play Inquisition again.
Inquisition is good, but there is apparently so you have to sort of once I figure out how Inquisition actually works, it was a lot less annoying. But one of the things they changed in Inquisition was that the mobs would respawn. So it wouldn't be like in the past where you clear an area, now the area is cleared. They would
Yeah.
respawn. But then you figure out that they only keep respawning until you take the checkpoint. So until you take the castle that they're holed up in, because there's like mobs that take over specific points on the map, and those points, those camps, serve as reinforcement camps. So if you take out that checkpoint, all of the mobs that would respawn in that area does go away. But there's apparently a mod that removes that entirely from the game, so you don't have to grind senselessly through mobs just to get stuff done. But yeah, the that Inquisition is fun. The story is really good. Once it really starts picking up, it's an actual fun game. Okay, so uh, let's move on to Elden Ring. Now, Rurikon, your favorite game seems to be driving people insane. I
Yeah.
remember when Elden Ring just came out, every journalist and their mother was writing articles about how this is the most bigoted game ever because it's not catering to disabled people and they should have difficulty. I mean, a- at this point, Souls games cannot escape the tourism that it comes with, because the tourists coming to this game and then start demanding changes. And then what's interesting to me is when I get tourists that they'll say something like, "Well, it's just a pause button. Why does it even matter? It won't do anything." It's like, actually, have you played Elden Ring? It will absolutely change the way the game is played. It will. not only I don't even have to come up with good reasons, even though I have, but I don't even have to come up with good reasons. All I can actually just say is Miyazaki doesn't fucking want it. If he wanted
So
it, he would have put it in the game.
the interesting thing about this is that because I've spoken a little bit about the pause button situation,
Hmm.
which I want to delve deeper into that, but like one of the things that has come up is that I've had some people tell me like, "Oh, you're just incapable of criticizing anything From Software does because you're a From Software fanboy and it is what it is." It's like I've criticized From Software in the past when I feel like they need criticism.
Yeah.
So, like for instance, there was some stuff in Dark Souls 2 that I was not a huge fan of, and I was very critical of it.
Hmm.
Particularly one of their DLCs that had this ice area that was annoying as shit. It was terrible design as far as I'm concerned. And I criticized and I was like, I think this is bad. This is terrible. Like the title of the when I did the playthrough, the title of it was even "Fuck the Frigid Outskirts" because that was the name of the place. And I was like, "Fuck this place! This place sucks."
Yeah.
There's also some boss run backs that I heavily criticized, like Sir Alone. The boss run back to that was crazy. Blue Smelter Demon, the boss run back to that was terrible. And overall, Dark Souls 2, I've always felt that overstayed its welcome. Like it's a game that lasts long beyond the point where you feel like this game should have ended around
Yeah.
here. And I understand that people are going to say like, "Oh, you're complaining about more content." And I was like, in the context of Dark Souls 2, yeah, because it feels like it drags. But it's neither here nor there. I still very much like Dark Souls 2, but I've criticized it. And the same
Mm.
thing with Dark Souls 3. I've criticized the latest DLC that they did for Dark Souls 3, the Ring City. I still hate it. I don't like it at all. And a lot of people like it. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So the thing is, I say, I don't like this, but I'm not going to go around and say they need to change this. They need to change it so that it's better for me. It's like,
Yeah.
no, because I know that there's a lot of people that liked what that DLC was. And I was like, all right, I mean, you guys like this. That's fine. I don't.
Mm.
I don't like the DLC. I don't like the one of the bosses that is in there that a lot of people like, Madeir, and people think that, oh, you got filtered by Madeir. It's like, no, I think the boss is piss easy. He just runs all over the fucking place, and the fight is me running after him. It's
Yeah.
boring as shit. So I don't like that boss. A lot of people love that boss. So again, I'm not going into it saying like, oh, they need to change this, they need to change that, but I have criticized From Software with
Yeah.
a lot of things. Now, when it comes to the whole pause button situation, the thing for me is in the beginning, when it comes to Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, these are games that there was a possibility of you being invaded at any point. There are these messages that are in the ground that you need to be online to see the messages, and like because of netcode and how all of that interacts together, I'm just assuming that this is like some kind of a technical limitation on their part. They don't want to
Yeah.
have a pause button.
Yeah.
Now they made a game called Sekiro. Sekiro is exclusively a single player game, plays very much like a Souls game in a lot of ways, but it has its own unique mechanics. Sekiro has a pause button.
Yeah.
You can pause Sekiro whenever you want.
Hmm.
I was like, all right, that's fine. And then you get to Elden Ring. And Elden Ring is weird because you no longer have traditional invasions,
Hmm.
which was you could be playing the game and you would organically be invaded by someone.
Yeah.
Now in Elden Ring, it's more so fight clubs. So it's like if you summon another player to help you in co op, then there's a chance you'll get invaded. But if you're playing solo, you're never going to get invaded unless you use an item called the Mad Taunter's Tongue. And the Matt Taunter's Tongue, what it does is it basically invites people to jump into your world. So it's not even an invasion. It's more kind of like the vampire situation where it's like
Yeah.
you're inviting the vampire in, otherwise they can't come in. So
Yeah.
Matt Taunter's Tongue just keeps a stream of players invading you nonstop. It's just
Yeah.
like invasion, invasion, invasion until you're overwhelmed and died.
Mm.
That's the way that that goes. And so in the case of Elden Ring, you can no longer make the argument when somebody is playing solo that you can't add a pause button because there's multiplayer interactions because there aren't. If you're
Yeah.
playing solo, unless using Matt Taunter's tongue, then there's no reason why, from a multiplayer standpoint, you can't have a pause button. Now, the thing to me is not having a pause is also something that in a way contributes to the relentlessness of the world, which is like this is a hostile world.
Yeah.
There's enemies coming at you at any point, and no, you can't just pause.
Yeah.
You can't just stop. The world doesn't stop coming at you unless you're at a safe location. And I would argue there might potentially be some immersion value there. And a lot of people will come at me and say, no, I disagree. There's no immersion value. I want to pause whenever I need to go take a piss. It's like, okay, that is your prerogative if that is the way that you feel.
Yeah.
Now, the question to me is, do we genuinely believe that From Software is incompetent? Because the request of a pause button isn't new in Elden Ring. It was requested in Dark Souls. It was requested in Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne. All of these games, people have asked, can I please have a pause button? And we've never gotten one.
Yeah.
So either you think that From Software is not listening to its community at all, which is clearly not the case because they're constantly changing the game based on community feedback,
Yeah.
or you believe that From Software is incompetent and they can't program a pause button. Now, the game does have a pause functionality,
Yeah.
which I personally think it's not intended, but a lot of people are using it as like, the game does have a pause. It's like, I don't think that's an intended pause, which is when you go into you open up your
Menu
inventory
and
and then you go into menu and explanation and
yeah.
whatever. And it's like whenever somebody says, but you can pause, it's like, yeah, is that really the intent of that feature though? That's just a developer giving you a break so that you can understand the gameplay mechanics. It's not really intended for you to go into that menu to go and pause.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, that's where I land with it. It's like, what if, for whatever reason, From Software designers go and they say, no, we don't think pause is the way to go. We don't want the game to have a pause. Now, I'm not going to assume that I know better. A lot of people are very comfortable saying that, like, no, I know better that From Software, it needs to have a pause and period. And it's like, hey, look, that's your prerogative. To me, I'm not opposed to it having a pause button. I'm not against it.
Yeah.
I'm just in favor of whatever the developer vision is when it comes to that, because I don't think it is this almighty important thing. Because a lot of people talk about it as if, oh my God, oh, if I die and lose my souls, that's the end. Oh no. And it's like, no, dude, you're probably going to die anyway. Get over yourself. Die and
Yeah.
go do whatever it is that you need to
I
go get
just
done.
so
It's fine. Then go back and pick up your runes or don't or lose them. I
yeah.
honestly don't. It's not that big of a deal. It
Yeah.
really isn't.
You see, personally, so here's where I landed on this. The first thing is that by adding a pause, and this is what I said, so I'll run you through the whole thing. I said, by adding a pause, you are opening the gate now for a lot of degenerative gameplay mechanics, right? People can start doing very degenerate shit on bosses. For example, you know that some bosses have HP thresholds, so they'll change the way they attack if they're under, say, 50% or 75% or whatever it may be. Now, if you have a pause function, you can literally hit that threshold and then hit pause. And now you can think about the next phase or maybe take a break quickly or whatever the case might be, right? But I then also went further and I said, the problem also is that even if you were to say that people could do that and that would be fine, here's the downside. In Elden Ring, all bosses are kind of like a dance. There's a rhythm to the dance, and you have to get into that rhythm. And as you get into that rhythm, you don't want to go out of that rhythm. This is why so often in Elden Ring, you will get a boss down to 90%. The very next try, you die at 10%. Because in the 90% try, you instantly snapped into the rhythm and you were in that rhythm. You were doing the dance with the boss. In the 10% try, you weren't, right? You just were off. And I had this with quite a few bosses in Elden Ring thus far where I just instantly feel something is off. Like I'm not dodging as fast as I'm supposed to, or I'm not jumping when I'm supposed to. And you just know. You don't know why, but for some reason you're not in the zone at this moment in time. Pausing in the middle of that, you're gonna die as soon as you unpause, right? Because you've just taken yourself
Yeah.
completely out of it. Now, a lot of people immediately came at me and said, see, so it doesn't even matter because no one's going to do that degenerative stuff of just, or degenerate shit of just pausing on a specific phase because it will throw them out of the rhythm. I'm like, okay, so all you're making the argument for here is a double reason not to add the pause function. Because you might get people that think, oh, shit, I'm being attacked by a lot of mobs. I'll just quickly pause here while I think about what to do. As soon as they unpause, they die. And they go, well, what's the fucking point of this? Ultimately, what I don't understand is what you think the pause is good for. Because if you say to me, I need to be able to answer the door, okay, as soon as you unpause, you're going to get killed. So then you're still gonna have to run back. So when is this pause function actually gonna be helpful? Because either you're standing in a place where there are no mobs, so you don't have to give a fuck, and you can just go onto the door, or you're in the middle of being attacked, and if you pause and you come back, you're gonna die. You would have died anyways, even if you didn't have a pause. So one is just taking a little bit longer to die, and then you still have to. So you've not, at this point, no one has been able to come up with a use case where pause would be helpful to your game. Because it's not like the whole world is dangerous. And also, I would like to add, fast travel is literally a click away. You can just travel to one of the grave sites and you are absolutely safe at the grave site. So if someone is at the door, you're telling me that they can't wait 1 fucking second for you to go map, click on a grave site, done, go on to the door. You don't even have to wait for the loading screen. You can just click it and leave and go open the door. So you're telling me, no, I don't have time for that. That person needs to be answered immediately. Like, to my mind, all of the reasons you might need a pause function comes with a lot of downsides. Because in every scenario where you would need this pause, because the argument that I imagine if I'm going to steelman it is I'm in the middle of fighting a rune bear. Now there's a ring at the door. Okay. Now
the rune bear is your steel man.
Well, here's the thing: you're in the middle of killing a rune bear, right?
It looks more like a straw man now. When the rune bear is going to kill you no matter what. Even if you didn't pause.
So imagine you're doing great against this rune bear. You have it down to 50%. You still have all 6 of your.
Let's be real, you're not.
I've killed a rune bear I've killed rune bears. But imagine, okay, so just imagine, right? You're on this rune bear, you're busy fighting it, now your phone rings. You quickly hit pause, you answer your phone, speak to the person for like 5 minutes, put down the phone, you unpause. The likelihood of you dying now, 90%.
When you unpause, the rune bear is like rubbing you with Vaseline. He's like,
yeah. He's about to fuck you. And you're going to die because you're completely out of the rhythm. You're completely out of the rhythm. You guaranteed will not remember the last attack sequence that the rune bear had. So you're guaranteed not going to remember what this rune bear is going to do next. So you're almost guaranteed going to die or take a lot of damage from that. It's just a miserable experience. Versus
that's
getting up and getting killed anyways. Yeah.
That's why it's very easy to then say, so what's the big deal? Just let them at it and then I'll die.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Which is why I personally, like I said, I'm very neutral on it. I'm very whatever the developers decide when it comes to the pause functionality, that's fine by me.
Yeah,
that's
but see,
perfectly fine.
To me, asking for the pause function when it has no upsides or downsides isn't so much that I have a problem with them adding pause or not adding pause. It's the reasons for why you're asking. You're asking for a function that makes 0 difference to how you will be playing that game or to the events that will occur as a result of the function being added. There is 0 difference.
I think there's one thing going on right now. Not right now. It's been going on for quite a number of years in gaming, which is the convenience factor. People do not want friction in video games. Almost any kind of friction whatsoever. They want, no, I want it to be like this. It needs to be convenient. It needs to work around what I want to do. And the problem is when you give people too much convenience, eventually people end up getting bored.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've been, having multiple discussions about when it comes to Monster Hunter, for instance, which is a series that is one of my favorite series of all time. And the thing is, they've been adding a lot of convenience features in Monster Hunter to the point where you're not familiar with this, but like if you have to go to a place that is warm, like say close to the inside of a volcano where there's magma everywhere.
Yeah.
In previous Monster Hunter games, you needed to drink a cold drink. And that gives you a buff wherein you can stay in the hot place for like I forget how many minutes it is. I think it's like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, something like that. And then 10 minutes, you have to like refresh that buff to ensure that you can remain in that hot place. Otherwise, you're gonna start taking a dot of damage because it's too hot where you are, and your character takes damage.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you go to a cold place,
You have to
you
drink a hot
will
drink.
you have to drink a hot drink because otherwise your stamina gets worse. It drains faster and it becomes shorter faster. So there's disadvantages. And in the most recent entry of Monster Hunter, which was Rise and Sunbreak, they just removed that. They just removed it
Yeah.
because it was more convenient. The developers even said, well, sometimes we jump into the hunt and we would forget the hot drink, and then we'd have to jump back out, and that was annoying. So we just removed it. And I was like, you know, that was the thing that generated immersion for me. Like the fact that
Yeah.
no, I have to maintain these buffs because I'm in this harsh situation and this is something that I have to deal with. Kind of like in, you probably don't know, but in Breath of the Wild, if you were to go to a cold area, you would be required to bundle up and dress more warmly or
Palworld
eat
has the
something that
same
would
thing,
give you a
right?
buff. Yeah,
Palworld has the same shit. Yeah.
Palworld had the same thing. And to me, these are all things that contribute to immersion,
Mm.
but they are inconvenient.
Yeah.
And people don't want inconvenience. They're like, no, fuck all that. I want to do whatever the fuck I want. And it's like, okay, I mean, if we just remove all friction from the video game, then you get to a point where it's like, hey, bosses are too hard. It's inconvenient. I need bosses to become easier. It's a very easy argument to make as you start moving the goalposts further and further. And
Yeah.
this is an exaggeration before people say, oh my God, what a massive trauma. Yeah, you don't go from removing hot and cold drinks to making bosses easier, but 1,000 steps in that direction, you will get there. You will
Yeah.
eventually get there.
You see, for me, if we're gonna talk about, because I just thought of the only area where a pause button could make some sense. Of course, I do view this as a lack of planning on the part of the gamer. I'll give you an example. My brother does this quite often. He'll go into a league game 20 minutes before we have to go somewhere, right? 20 minutes before we have to go somewhere, he'll enter into a league game, thinking to himself that this game won't take 20 minutes. And then it ends up taking 40
Easy.
minutes. And I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, I didn't know that it was going to take 40 minutes. I'm like, yeah, but you were
It's a league
banking.
game.
Yeah, you
What do you
were
mean?
hoping that it's going to, you knew you only had 20 minutes left. Like, why the fuck
Does your
would you
brother
go
have
into
a
a league game?
gambling problem?
No, he has a league problem. um, he quit playing League now because of it. It got
Good.
to the point where it was destroying his life, according to him. But
Yep.
this is sort of, and a lot of people have this. It drives me fucking nuts. You know, if I know that I have people coming over and it's in an hour from now, I won't start playing a game because the last thing I want is getting into this game and then being interrupted by someone. Right. So
Like
I won't play the
I
game.
think if you're an hour away and you can plan something that you're for sure, like, like for instance, if somebody is an hour away from coming to visit me, like
Mhm.
I'll play a little bit of Elden Ring. Sure, I'll get a
Fun.
little bit of some side activities and whatnot, but always doing stuff that it'll be okay for me to just like, okay, they're here, turn it off.
See, I can't do that because for me, if I know we're gonna go out at say 12 o'clock, I'll be ready by 11:30, and I'll wait the next half hour because I need to be sure that if in case something happens, I can be ready
Yeah.
for that, whatever it may be. But as far as I'm concerned, but I just thought of one use case scenario where yes, it's lack of planning on the gamer's part, but it might be a useful place to talk about the pause function, and that is there are bosses where you go into the boss room, and as soon as you get into the boss room, the boss pulls, right? So it's not like you have to run closer to the boss. It's like Tree Sentinel, where you have to run right up to Tree Sentinel in order for him to notice you. It's like as soon as you enter into that fucking room, that boss goes, "Oh shit, let me kill you." I'm thinking of that big ogre troll thing that I just killed not too long ago, or the wolf boss thing at the castle. Where as soon as you run in, it's pull time. Now, let's say you go into that, you go out of the loading screen, and suddenly there's a knock at the door. Now you're fucked because you can't leave the room again, right? You're now inside the room. And there, a pause could absolutely be great because you haven't engaged the
Let
bosses
me
in combat.
let
So,
me teach you a trick.
yeah.
You open the menu, system, quit game.
Yeah, you can do that. But remember, I'm now talking about people that don't want to open the menu and go to menu explanation or open the menu and quit game, right? They want a quick and easy pause function.
Yeah.
To that, I would argue, why not? Instead of adding a pause button that is just unnecessary in 99% of use cases, except for like this one case, why not instead make it so that you can leave the boss room as long as you haven't done damage to the boss? That, to me, seems like it solves all of these problems.
No, hell no. Hell no.
Why?
Never.
Why?
Because that's part of the thing. Sometimes certain bosses you don't get the plan for. Not every boss has a fog wall. Some
No.
bosses
But
you'll be opening a door and it's like, oh shit, it's a boss fight.
yeah, but remember that
No.
that's still going to be
never.
there. Remember, that's not going to change, right? If you open a door, if there's no, but
What
wait a
you
second.
just said,
Wait.
never.
I don't see how your example goes against anything I just said. Because if a boss doesn't have a fog wall, there's nothing you can fucking do at that point, right? You just have to run away, and eventually he'll stop chasing you. But if a boss does have a fog wall, and you can run out as long as you have not done damage to the boss, that solves the issue without removing any of the others.
It allows you to scout the boss. No.
What does that help?
I completely disagree. It doesn't matter if it helps. It's the factor of you seeing the boss. You've seen the boss. Now you have to fight.
Yeah, but
no,
there's places,
you don't get to run away.
Hold up. There's places where you're
not going to convince me.
Hold up. There are places where you can see the boss, even though you're not in the room. Like, for example, that wolf guy.
Matter.
The wolf guy, you can see that guy from the outside. He's standing there.
Yeah.
You just have to go through the wall in order to finally see him.
Doesn't matter. Listen,
I personally think I don't see how that's a problem, bro.
I am neutral when it comes to the pause thing, but exiting a fog wall, you will have to take that one from my cold dead fingers.
But
you
why?
crossed the fog wall, motherfucker. It's showtime. I don't care if somebody in your family dies.
So you're telling me
you crossed the fog wall.
What's
it
the
is
difference?
over.
Tell me, what is the difference between that and hitting a pause button? What's the difference? You're still going to kill the boss inside the fog wall, right?
Yeah.
The only difference is you quickly have to go onto the door. So you just turned around, ran back out of the fog wall, and now you're just waiting on the other side. As soon as you've done answering the door, you're going right back in to go kill that boss. So what exactly is the difference?
I can't, dude, it's visceral. It is a visceral thing for me. I hate the idea of you being able to cross the fog wall back. And by the way, what I just told you earlier of going in the system and quitting, that puts you outside the fog wall. So you technically can exit the fog wall.
Well, there we go. Right?
If,
so
if you quit in the middle of a boss fight, it takes you outside. I also don't agree with that, but I have used it.
All right. Yeah. But to my mind, the reason I'm saying, as long as you haven't damaged the boss, is it's even better than the quit function. Because the quit function, even if you have damaged the boss. Whereas this one basically just says, as long as you haven't engaged this boss in any fight whatsoever.
Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
So let me tell you why. Would you argue that a big thing about Elden Ring is it kind of like playing on your emotions, making you feel overwhelmed all of a sudden?
Yeah.
How much does it sabotage that if I know that at any given point I can just walk into a boss room and leave?
I don't think it does. No, I don't think.
Dude, it takes away 90% of the sense of dread of me exploring the game.
Yeah, but
I'm not even exaggerating.
I don't
easily 90% of the sense of dread.
I don't necessarily agree, considering the fact that I feel that dread, even though I know that fucking boss is there, and even though I know I fought this boss 5 or 6 times already, I still feel that dread going into that room because I know that I'm gonna have to fight this guy again. Tree Sentinel is a great example. Tree Sentinel is there the whole fucking time. That dread doesn't go away knowing that Tree Sentinel is there.
You can move away from the Tree Sentinel. You can get away.
Yeah, but again, this is just speaking to your point of it removes the dread. It doesn't. He's right there at the beginning of the fucking game.
Yeah, but the difference with the Tree Sentinel is that you don't have to fight the Tree Sentinel. You can go anywhere you want. Whereas the moment you walk through that fog door, you're in this room locked in with the boss. You can't leave. You can't leave.
I don't necessarily agree with you, but it's fine. We don't have to agree on this let's throw it over to chat and let's ask the people that's watching. What do you guys think? Pause function that in 99% of cases is completely useless and can't be used anyways for the things or the reasons that people claim it can be used, or just being able to leave the fog wall as long given provided you have not engaged the boss in combat. What do you think? What's your take on this? Let us know in the comment section down below. Rurikon, I have one final question for you. What happens in Elden Ring if, at the beginning of the game, you kill the spider?
Oh, you actually want to know?
If you were to kill the spider at the beginning of the game,
Yes.
do you win the game then? Is that then
Yeah.
over, basically?
Yeah, the spider is holding the Elden Ring.
Well, I kind of figured that because he's the first real fucking guy you see and clearly
Yeah,
very
he
angry.
has the Elden Ring. It's the solution to everything in the game is that spider.
Well, it doesn't matter that I know that because I still don't quite know what the solution
I'm
means.
joking, you idiot. Of course, the spider's inconsequential. It's just a grafted scion. It's worthless.
But why? Why is he the first enemy you face and why is he so fucking hard?
Because he's meant to kill you, because it's a tradition in every Souls game that the first boss you fight kills you.
Did I
In
die?
Demons, listen,
the first
let
boss
me
in
tell you.
Dark Souls 1?
In Demon Souls, the first boss that you fight is this creature called I forget is it a Vanguard demon? I think it's a Vanguard demon. And he is really hard and he will sit on you and kill you in one hit. So you're meant to die and then you spawn somewhere else. If you kill him, they'll actually let you go to this secret area and there's a big dragon and the dragon eventually punches you in the face and kills you anyway. But you get to pick up some loot, some extra loot that you wouldn't be able to pick up otherwise. So that's Demon Soul. So, and that is a tradition that it's always been the case. So for instance, in the original Dark Souls, you're in the asylum and if you try fighting the dude the first time, he's going to pound you because you're not going to have a weapon, because you don't start with the weapon in the original Dark Souls. You're meant to run away on your first try. In Dark Souls 2, I forget, but Dark Souls 2 is very different. And in Dark Souls 3, there's also a boss. Crap. Was that? I think there's also a boss that's meant to kill. But regardless of that, there's always something like that. There's always like a mob that is meant to kind of like kill you at the beginning. And in Elden Ring, it's that grafted scion. What happens if you kill the grafted scion? You get a special shield and a special sword that you can only get by killing the grafted scion, but you can go there later and kill him.
Yeah.
A little bit later in your playthrough, you'll be able to go back to where you were there and you'll be able to kill him. And you can get that sword and that shield. And then after you get the sword and shield, they open up the thing that lets you exit that area. And you walk outside and there's like a trap and you fall down and you die anyway. So you're always going to die, even if you kill him. The only way to leave that place is to die.
Wait, so that's confirmed. There's no other way to leave that place.
Yeah. What do you mean that's confirmed? The game's been out for 2 years. Yes, it's confirmed.
And no one has tried to get around the trap.
It doesn't matter because it's in an island. So even if you don't fall to the trap, you can't leave. There's no way to leave.
Oh, okay.
The only way to leave is to die.
Okay.
Or use dev tools to teleport yourself. I don't know.
Yeah, I wanted to ask because that I think it does a wonderful job of setting the tone for Elden Ring, because a huge part of Elden Ring and a huge part of the emotional connection to Elden Ring is this idea of eventually, at first you get pummeled by shit, and then eventually you almost one-shot shit, and that feeling of power is just ecstatic. It's such a cool feeling. And this boss is probably one of those. They want to, early on, make you feel really powerless, really helpless, don't know what the fuck's going on. And then eventually you get super powerful and you just start fucking up shit like the spider dude. But yeah, I wanted to ask because I tried really hard on that fight. I didn't land a single blow and I got killed in it. So, just wanted to ask what happens if you kill him.
So if you want to have a chance at beating him, Vati Video made a video on it. It involves taking the boiled prawn gift at the beginning because that lowers the damage that you take. and taking a certain class that has certain weapons. And so, like, there is a combination of things that is going to
Mhm.
make it much easier for you to try and get them, but it's still hard, even if you do all
Yeah.
those things.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But it's kind
That's
of
cool.
like a tradition that at the start of most Souls games, you're going to get into an encounter where you're meant to die.
It makes sense, right? It makes sense
Yeah.
because that is the whole point of the game. I think it's sort of from the beginning setting you up for this power fantasy of getting more powerful and eventually fucking things up, but then also making sure that you understand from the beginning death is not a punishment. Death is
Yeah.
just part of the game. And that took me a long time to figure out, right? A long time because in the beginning you get super annoyed when you die. And then you
That's
realize, oh, but I don't nothing happens when I die. Like,
yeah.
nothing
That's the
happens.
thing. We've gotten so used to death being a punishment in video games
Mhm.
to wherein a lot of people they just don't want to deal with it. It's like, oh no, if I die, it means I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And in Dark Souls, it's like, no, if you're dying, you're learning.
Yeah. Well, sometimes some people don't learn. They just keep doing the same
True.
shit over and over again. Um, I made that mistake a couple of times in the beginning where you die and you
We've
just
all
go
done it.
right back in and you do the exact same shit. Not for 1 second thinking, wait a second. I clearly keep dying to this. Why am I? Again, I'll go back to the wolf boss because that's the most prime example. I was fighting this wolf boss, right? And I was fucking rolling and dodging all over the place, trying to avoid all of his damage. And at some point, one of my chatters asked me, and we've already died like 20 times to this fucking thing. One of my chatters asked me, are you waiting for this guy to get tired? I barely ever fucking hit him. I just roll, right? Just try to stay away from him. And he's like, are you trying to get this guy tired or what's going on? And so I see that and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to go in and hit as hard as I fucking can and just
Yeah.
see what happens. And then, yeah, killed him. I was like,
And then you hit
oh,
him until he died. Yeah.
yeah, because
But
he
you have to
staggers pretty
understand
easy.
there is value in what you did before
Mhm.
because you are learning the moveset. You were just dodging all over the place, but you were learning how he
Yeah.
moves.
But
And then when it came time to punish, you knew what his attacks were going to be.
yeah. But also on that boss, attacking would have been. But you see, this is the problem because I just kept running in over and over again, not once thinking, okay, wait a second. You kind of know the attack strategy. The problem with the attack strategy is he gives you almost no fucking time. There's very few attack windows, so to speak. But then
And
you
by the way,
realize by attacking, you realize, wait, there's plenty of attack windows, but you have to create them because he staggers pretty quickly. So if you do a heavy hit, that opens it up. He'll take the fucking damage because he staggers pretty quickly.
yeah. So before people in this episode get confused because you're saying the lion boss, and in the DLC there's a new boss that's a dancing lion. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the Leonine Misbegotten from Castle Morn.
Yeah, I
Okay?
call it the wolf
Just to
boss.
put things into perspective. Oh, you called it wolf? Okay, never
Yeah,
mind.
I
I
call
thought
it
you
the
were
wolf
calling it
boss.
lion.
I didn't know it was a
Yeah, it's
lion.
lion and it's a lion. It's not a lion. It's called Leonine Misbegotten.
Yeah.
That's his name.
All right, but yeah, I'm talking about. To me, he sounded like, he made me think of a wolf. So I just been like, fuck it,
Yeah.
it's a wolf. Um, but yeah, all right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a bit of a shorter episode, I know, but take that up with the big heads over at gaming that refuse to give news. Um, I hope you enjoyed it, from me and from Rurikon. Of course, Rurikon, thank you so much once again for joining us on this journey. Although I say joining us, this is our podcast, so you kind of
Yeah,
have to be
that was
here.
like that was weird. What do you mean
Yeah,
joining
you kind of
us?
have to be here, otherwise there is no fucking podcast. Um, we have our own channels where we do things. Just FYI, this is
Yeah.
our thing. But anyways, we really appreciate you. Remember to hit that like, hit that subscribe because it does help out a ton. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and we will see all of you in the next one. Peace.